I wrote a book last year called Historic Pubs of Wales, where I basically went to all the pubs in Wales, 89 pubs in Wales that claim to be the oldest pub, and to try and narrow down which one genuinely was the oldest pub, and the amount of genuine history, but also wonderful bits of folklore that came out of that. So it's I'm quite happy to be tagging along with you today at one of the pubs that's in the book. I'll give you a couple of little history pointers while we're here. But the main thing attached to this particular pub is a fantastic story which undoubtedly has some historic truth in it. But as Iolo more than capable of explaining, sometimes the end story and the beginning history does get expanded upon just a little bit. But the history pointers, if you get an opportunity to pop into the church, there was a family called the Bassets. Have you been down towards Beaupre? Have you spoken about the Bassets at all while on this walk? You're in then? Oh, I'll shut up. I won't say too much about it then. But yeah, so they were, if you like, sort of 17th century nouveau riche. So they acquired a great deal of money, sort of in the beginning of the Tudor end of the Tudor, beginning of the Stuart reign, and with their newfound wealth, they built this amazing place you're about to go and see, and they also put a lot of money into making sure the church in St Hilary was kept in tip-top condition. And there's some nice, there's some tombs here, and also further afield in Llantrithid, I think it is the other church, where if you're interested in that period of history, I mean, there are some absolutely beautiful artifacts left over from them. So there's your history pointers. In terms of this place, I mean, this inn again is very, very original. Obviously, with most buildings of this age, you're not looking at something that all went up in one go. It was built in stages, and it's had different uses. But most of the features here are a really good original kind of 17th century features. And the middle room in particular, where the ingle nook is, I mean, that clearly that was a kitchen at some time in a cottage, but it's untouched. It is exactly as it would have been. So it's a great example of that type of thing. So definitely would recommend having a look at it. But the point that I wanted to bring about was a little bit in a later history, and we're talking towards the tail end of the 18th century. Now, we have the Roman road that the A48 is mostly built on, going over the hill here. And in the 18th century, travel anywhere in the UK was a very perilous undertaking. We had lots of bandits and outlaws and highwaymen. We had a particular problem because we'd had the Franco-Dutch War, and lots of people returned from that war either with physical or mental scars, who found great difficulty finding work. So you had an awful lot of trained killers wandering around with no income. And back then, there was no welfare state. If you didn't have money coming in, you were just going to die. So that's part of the reason why there was this massive glut of robberies and highwaymen and things like that. And there was a blight on the otherwise genteel county that we find ourselves in right now. And that was a spate of robberies that used to take place at the crossroads just at the top here. And one of the ways they thought to deal with that was to actually put the gallows on that crossroads, to try and discourage people from committing these crimes, but it had no effect at all. They just carried on unabated. And in this particular inn, there was a local character. I think every inn has its character. These days, they usually wear waistcoats and tweed caps, but back then, this chap used to probably spend a little bit too much time in here, and he used to boast because he clearly didn't have the respect of his peers that he felt he deserved. His name was Ianto Ffranc. And he was a petty criminal. He was. If there was something missing in the village, generally speaking, Ianto Ffranc was behind it. But we don't think it was anything any worse than that. But to try and get the respect of his peers, who generally, treated him with a little bit of contempt, he started spinning these stories that he was actually the ringleader behind these robberies that were taking place, and that he was the man not to be trifled with. Because he would meet you with a cutlass or a pistol and cut you down. And everyone heard these stories. They were generally treated with a pinch of salt. Until one day he was caught stealing a sheep and was up in front of the beak in Cowbridge. In those days, the magistrates' court was in the lesser hall in the town hall in Cowbridge. And he stood there facing this charge. And when the magistrate asked for people to give some comment on the character of the man that stood before him, these stories started to come out, and people started saying, "Oh, well, I heard him boasting in the bush that he was behind the robbery last week," and Ianto's eyes immediately start bursting forward. He tries to interrupt, and the magistrate's not having any of it. So, well, do we have any more stories like this? And so all these stories come out about him being this notorious criminal, and he's trying his best to plead his innocence. But unfortunately, the magistrate is by now convinced that this criminal genius is standing before him in the dock, and he has an opportunity once and for all to take him down and rid the county of this blight. So he is convicted, and to everyone's amazement, he displays some hitherto unseen athletic ability as he leaps out of the box and charges out of the courtroom before the bailiffs can grab him, and makes a run for it and disappears. So they start searching from house to house to try and track him down. No one can find him. So then they broaden their search to try and take in the surrounding countrysides and fields. And this sort of hilltop behind us, nothing so much now, but in the early days, there were little mines dug there because there are small traces of lead and various other precious metals if you dig down deep enough. They'd all been long since abandoned, but certainly sort of around the medieval period they were in use. Well, he found one of these and hid inside this mine shaft to try and avoid capture. And it took them, I think, 3 days before they did finally track him down and managed to get him out of the cave. And sadly, he did face the gallows. And when they asked him for any last words, he assured everyone gathered that they had not rid themselves of their highwayman problem, which of course turned out to be absolutely true. But as with all great legends, there is a ghost story. And apparently, if you time it right, I'm not quite sure what day this is meant to have happened, but if you time it right, the ghost of Ianto Ffranc runs through the Bush Inn trying to find somewhere to hide from the authorities. So yeah, a sad story. But that little story has also confounded serious research because there's a notorious highwayman near Bridgend called Cap Corch, and he covered the whole, he was all over the place. He had robberies as far away as Llantwit. But when people were researching around what happened to him, because what happened to Cap Corch is a bit of a grey area, they kept coming across stories of Ianto Ffranc, which just confounded everything, because they're thinking, well, what's he doing in St Hilary, stealing sheep? So there we go, that's why.